You can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. Which one of those, when you're 90 years old, are you going to be more proud of? It's your choices that construct your life, not your gifts. You can celebrate your gifts. Don't be proud of them, be celebratory of them, but you can't be proud because they're gifts. They were given to you. You didn't earn them. You can only be proud of the things you earn. And so as I got older, I started to realize I wasn't proud of my gifts. I was always good at school. School was always easy for me. And I was always proud that I was a great student. I got A's in all my classes. I was good at math, all of that. I thought that's who I was, but it's not true. Those are the things that are gifts. What was hard for me is deciding to work hard, deciding to use my gifts in certain ways, to challenge myself, to do things that I didn't think I could do, to put myself in uncomfortable situations.
The stress primarily comes from not taking action over something that you can have some control over. So if I find that some particular thing is causing me to have stress, that's a warning flag for me. What it means is there's something that I haven't completely identified, perhaps in my conscious mind, that is bothering me, and I haven't yet taken any action on it.
You want to set up your culture so that the most junior person can overrule the most senior person if they have data. And that really is about trying to, there are little things you can do. So for example, in every meeting that I attend, I always speak last. And I know from experience that if I speak first, even very strong-willed, highly intelligent, high judgment participants in that meeting will wonder, well, if Jeff thinks that, I came in this meeting thinking one thing, but maybe I'm not right. So you can do little things like, if you're the most senior person in the room, go last. Any high-performing organization has to have mechanisms and a culture that supports truth-telling. One of the things you have to do is you have to talk about that. And you have to talk about the fact that it takes energy to do that. And you have to talk to people. You have to remind people it's okay that it's uncomfortable. You have to literally tell people it's not what we're designed to do as humans. It's not really, it's kind of a side effect. We can do that. But it's not how we survive. We mostly survive by being social animals and being cordial and cooperative, and that's really important. And so, science is all about truth-telling. It's actually a very formal mechanism for trying to tell the truth. Humans are not really truth-seeking animals. We are social animals. Take you back in time 10,000 years and you're in a small village. If you go along to get along, you can survive. You can procreate. If you're the village truth teller, you might get clubbed to death in the middle of the night. Truths are often, they don't want to be heard because important truths can be uncomfortable, they can be awkward, they can be exhausting.
Impolite.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff.
Challenging.
Yeah.
They can make people defensive, even if that's not the intent. But any high-performing organization, whether it's a sports team, a business, a political organization, an activist group, I don't care what it is, any high-performing organization has to have mechanisms and a culture that supports truth-telling. If you make the wrong decision, if it's a two-way door decision, you walk out the door, you pick a door, you walk out, you spend a little time there, it turns out to be the wrong decision, you can come back in and pick another door. Some decisions are so consequential and so important and so hard to reverse that they really are one-way door decisions. You go in that door, you're not coming back. And those decisions have to be made very deliberately, very carefully. If you can think of yet another way to analyze the decision, you should slow down and do that. Escalation is better than war of attrition. Escalate to your boss and say, hey, we can't agree on this. We like each other. We're respectful of each other, but we strongly disagree with each other. We need you to, make a decision here so we can move forward. But decisiveness, moving forward quickly on on decisions as quickly as you responsibly can is how you increase velocity. Most of what slows things down is taking too long to make decisions at all skill levels. So it has to be part of the culture to get high velocity. Amazon has 1.5 million people, and the company is still fast. We're still decisive. We're still quick. And that's because the culture supports that.
At every scale in a distributed way,
Yes.
try to maximize the velocity of decisions.
Exactly. There are big things that are really important to manage, and then there are small things. Internally to Amazon, we call them paper cuts. So we're always working on the big things. Like if you ask me, and most of the energy goes into the big things, as it should. So, and you can identify the big things. So when you identify the big things, you can tell they're worth putting energy into because they're stable in time. Okay, but you're asking about something a little different, which is in every customer experience, there are those big things. And by the way, it's astonishingly hard to focus even on just the big things. So even though they're obvious, they're really hard to focus on. But in addition to that, there are all these little tiny customer experience deficiencies. And we call those paper cuts. And we make long lists of them. And then we have dedicated teams that go fix paper cuts, because the teams working on the big issues never get to the paper cuts. They never work their way down the list to get to, they're working on big things, as they should, and as you want them to. And so you need special teams who are charged with fixing paper cuts.
Why do I need to make 100 decisions a day? If I make like 3 good decisions a day, that's enough. And they should just be as high quality as I can make them. We have some very specific ideas of what we want to do, but I believe in the power of wandering. All of my best decisions in business and in life have been made with heart, intuition, guts, not analysis. When you can make a decision with analysis, you should do so. But it turns out in life that your most important decisions are always made with instinct, intuition, taste, heart. And that's what we'll do with this day one foundation too. And the customer is going to be the child. This is so important because the secret sauce of Amazon, where there are several principles at Amazon, but the number one thing that has made us successful by far is obsessive, compulsive focus on the customer as opposed to obsession over the competitor.
By the way, a lot of our most powerful truths turn out to be hunches. They turn out to be based on anecdotes.
Yeah.
They're intuition based, and sometimes you don't even have strong data. But you may know the person well enough to trust their judgment. You may feel yourself leaning in. It may resonate with a set of anecdotes you have, and then you may be able to say, something about that feels right. Let's go collect some data on that. Let's try to see if we can actually know whether it's right. But for now, let's not disregard it because it feels right. You can also fight inherent bias. There's an optimism bias. Like if there are 2 interpretations of a new set of data, and one of them is happy and one of them is unhappy, it's a little dangerous to jump to the conclusion that the happy interpretation is right. If you're talking about, generative AI, large language models, things like ChatGPT and its soon successors, and these are incredibly powerful technologies. To believe otherwise is to bury your head in the sand, soon to be even more powerful. It's interesting to me that large language models in their current form are not inventions, they're discoveries. The telescope was an invention, but looking through it at Jupiter, knowing that it had moons was a discovery. Like, my God, it has moons.
Could you describe a little bit the role of your grandfather? Because John has mentioned it. I think it was really important for you.
It was super important for me. And I spent an unusual amount of time with my grandparents, and especially with my grandfather on the ranch. So he had a ranch in South Texas, and I would spend my summers there from age 4 to 16. And when I was 4, they were taking me for the summer to kind of give my parents a break, because they were so young. And it was useful. I was a handful, I'm sure. And anyway, he created the illusion for me when I was 4 years old that I was helping him on the ranch. which of course could not have been true, but I believed it. And then by the time I was 16, of course, I was actually helping on the ranch. I can fix prolapsed cattle. We did all of our own veterinary work. Some of the cattle even survived.
One of your employees has said that you collect 0.5 gigabyte, whatever that is, of information on your customers every day. That's about 350 floppy disks worth. What do you do with that information?
That's the data that allows us to predict or try to predict what books and videos and music that you would like, that you haven't discovered yet.
Next question. What's a perfectly productive day in the life of Jeff Bezos? You're one of the most productive humans in the world.
Well, first of all, I get up in the morning and I putter. I have a coffee.
Can you define putter?
Just I slowly move around. I'm not as productive as you might think I am. I mean, because I do believe in wandering, and I read my phone for a while. I read newspapers for a while. I chat with Laura, and I drink my first coffee. So I move pretty slowly in the first couple of hours. I get up early, just naturally, and then I exercise most days, and most days it's not that hard for me. Some days it's really hard, and I do it anyway. I don't want to, and it's painful, and I'm like, why am I here? And I don't want to do it.
Why am I here at the gym?
Why am I here at the gym? My perfect meeting starts with a crisp document. So the document should be written with such clarity that it's like angels singing from on high. I like a crisp document and a messy meeting. And so the meeting is about asking questions that nobody knows the answer to and trying to wander your way to a solution. And that is, when that happens just right, it makes all the other meetings worthwhile. It feels good. It has a kind of beauty to it. It has an aesthetic beauty to it. My routine, on a good day, I do about half an hour of cardio, and I do about 45 minutes of weightlifting, resistance training of some kind, mostly weights. I have a trainer who, I love, who pushes me, which is really helpful. I'll be like, he'll say, Jeff, do you think can we go up on that weight a little bit? And I'll think about it, and I'll be like, no, I don't think so. And he'll look at me and say, yeah, I think you can. And of course he's right.
Yeah, of course.
So it's helpful to have somebody push you a little bit.
But almost every day you do that.
I do almost every day. I do a little bit of cardio and a little bit of weightlifting, and I rotate. I do a pulling day and a pushing day and a leg day. It's all pretty standard stuff.
What kind of kid were you?
Well, I was a good student. I always worked really hard. I was nerdy.
You were nerdy.
I was nerdy. That hasn't changed, by the way.
I don't really know Elon very well. I know his public persona, but I also know you can't know anyone by their public persona. It's impossible. I mean, you may think you do, but I guarantee you don't. So I don't really know. You know Elon way better than I do, Lex. But in terms of judging by the results, he must be a very capable leader. There's no way you could have, Tesla and SpaceX without being a capable leader. It's impossible.
Yeah, I hope you guys hang out sometimes, shake hands, and sort of have a kind of friendship that would inspire just the entirety of humanity. Because what you're doing is like one of the big, grand challenges ahead for humanity.
Well, I agree with you, and I think in a lot of these endeavors, we're very like-minded.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm not saying we're identical, but I think we're very like-minded, and so I love that idea. So unfortunately, in companies, what can happen is that you have a one-size-fits-all decision-making process, where you end up using the heavyweight process on all decisions.
For everything, yeah.
Including the lightweight ones, the two-way door decisions. Two-way door decisions should mostly be made by single individuals or by very small teams deep in the organization. Mm-hmm. And one-way door decisions are the ones that are the irreversible ones. Those are the ones that should be elevated up to, the senior-most executives who should slow them down and make sure that the right thing is being done. If there are two interpretations of a new set of data, and one of them is happy and one of them is unhappy, it's a little dangerous to jump to the conclusion that the happy interpretation is right. You may want to sort of compensate for that human bias of looking for, trying to find the silver lining and say, look, that might be good, but I'm going to go with it's bad for now until we're sure.
The way I made the decision to leave Wall Street and do this was, it'll sound geeky to you, but it was a regret minimization framework. So this is how I actually made it.
So if I understand it, if I can translate that into English I can deal with, does that mean I want to live my life so that in a few decades from now I'm not going to regret it?
That's exactly right. I want to have lived my life in such a way that when I'm 80 years old, I've minimized the number of regrets that I have. And I think actually a lot of people do that. I think even if they don't, call it something as dorky as regret minimization framework, they behave that way anyway. They think that way.
But for you, it was not carpe diem. It was not wine, women, and song.
No. I don't go in for carpe diem. I go in for regret minimization framework.
On Friday, Amazon.com's total stock market value surged past $30 billion, making it worth more than a major industrial company like Texaco. That didn't blow your mind when you read it?
Well, I think if you're asking for sort of an emotional response, I think it's very humbling, and it creates a sense of responsibility.
In business and anybody where you have teammates, you have a teammate and the two of you disagree.
Yeah.
At some point you have to make a decision. And, in companies, we tend to organize hierarchically. So there's this, whoever's the more senior person ultimately gets to make the decision. So ultimately the CEO gets to make that decision. And the CEO may not always make the decision that they agree with. So I would be the one who would disagree and commit. One of my direct reports would very much want to do something in a particular way. I would think it was a bad idea. I would explain my point of view. They would say, Jeff, I think you're wrong, and here's why. And we would go back and forth. And I would often say, you know what? I don't think you're right, but I'm going to gamble with you. And you're closer to the ground truth than I am. I've known you for 20 years. You have great judgment. I don't know that I'm right either. Not really, not for sure. All these decisions are complicated. Let's do it your way. But at least then you've made a decision. And I'm agreeing to commit to that decision. So I'm not going to be second guessing it. I'm not going to be sniping at it. I'm not going to be saying, I told you so. I'm going to try actively to help make sure it works. That's a really important teammate behavior. The advantage of compromise as a resolution mechanism is that it's low energy, but it doesn't lead to truth. And so in things like the height of the ceiling, where truth is a knowable thing, you shouldn't allow compromise to be used when you can know the truth. Mm-hmm. Another really bad resolution mechanism that happens all the time is just who's more stubborn.
Yeah.
This is also, so you have, let's say, two executives who disagree, and they just have a war of attrition. And whichever one gets exhausted first capitulates to the other one. Again, you haven't arrived at truth. And this is very demoralizing. So, this is where escalation, I try to ask people who, on my team, I say, never get to a point where you are resolving something by, who gets exhausted first. Escalate that. I'll help you make the decision. Because that's so de-energizing and such a terrible, lousy way to make a decision.
I'm very interested in early education, and I made that, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My mother has become, in running the Bezos Family Foundation, she has become an expert in early education. I'm a student of Montessori schools. I started at Montessori when I was 2 years old, and the teacher complained to my mother, the Montessori school teacher complained to my mother that I was too task focused and that she couldn't get me to switch tasks, so she would have to just pick up my chair and move me. Oh. And by the way, I think that's, if you ask the people who work with me, that's still probably true.